we are excited to welcome legitimate team here to our discussion on Avalanche Spaces today. So hold on if you want to kick things off and jump into some intros.
Yeah, absolutely. So today joining us is the legitimate tech team. We have the CEO and founder, Calvin Chan, and we have the CTO, Daniel Duan. I think our mic checks are out of the way, and I'm desperately trying to get on as the Art on Avalanche account. But guys, thank you so much for being with us today. Do you want to start us off with just a quick introduction to legitimate and what Phygital is generally?
So we at Legitimate do phygital goods, right? So digital experiences that connect to physical products in the real world. And we do it through a encrypted NFC chip that is connected to an NFT on the blockchain. So you can think of digital experiences as anything from NFTs, special content, AR, VR experiences, maybe even in-game content, right? So all of that is enabled through our legitimate Phygital platform.
Excellent. And so tell us a little bit about why Web3 is ready for this now. We've been talking about it for a while. Like I was saying at the beginning, like it's been an idea that's been out there. Why is it just now starting to become a thing that people can do to connect these physical goods?
I can take this one. So I think the biggest sort of misconception is that this technology is new or hasn't been around. This technology has been around for years now. The capabilities have been there, but I think in terms of the Web3 space, what we're seeing a lot is a lot of NFT projects specifically are looking for utility, and especially in this type of market, a lot of that utility comes from in-person events, in-person activations, physical touch. And what we're seeing is, with artifacts kind of pioneering the way in terms of what they did years ago, we're now seeing a lot more interest from other NFT projects to be able to do the same.
Excellent. I think we caught you on your commute home. And I believe we're getting a little bit of background there. But I know you touched on this a little bit, Daniel, but you talk about how legitimate actually works. It uses NFC tags. So, like you're saying, Calvin, some of this technology has been around a while, but you guys have put it together in sort of a different combination to connect it with NFTs on the blockchain. Could you dive in a little bit more into how the legitimate works specifically with the physical products?
Yeah, so we start with the creators, right? We work with them to figure out hey, what is the type of product you want to, put, say, on-chain, right? On-chain and off-chain. And then from there on, we work with the manufacturing team to figure out how the NFC chip is integrated. And at the same time, we help, with ideation on what types of digital experiences are appropriate for that product, right? Say for the Puma launch that we just did a couple weeks back, their customers are really not Web3, right? But they still want the kind of connected experience, the digital content, the interactivity that people really want, and it's pretty new in the mass market, right? So when we look at it from a holistic perspective, legitimate, we do advising, we do a little bit of consultation, and then we really put everything together in an all-in-one package. That's what we at Legitimate help with.
And I just had a quick follow-up on their huddle, just in terms of for any teams listening or curious, just in terms of how integrated you guys are on the manufacturing process. Can you just talk through a little bit, as you guys approach partnerships, if it's something that, you guys are working closely with or you partner with, what does that process look like for teams that are looking to use Legitimate?
Hey guys, is this better? You guys aren't,
Yep.
hearing the
Much
New York
better.
City traffic behind me?
Much better.
That's better.
I'm sorry. Okay, so Yeah, I think we are first and foremost a protocol as a service. So we've designed I'll let Daniel get into it a little bit later too. A really unique protocol to kind of bind the physical and the digital. But in doing so, we also have been extensively working on developing partnerships and relationships with different sort of providers around the world, and that ranges from actual manufacturing partners to distribution partners to even design partners. So as a project, sometimes we talk to people who don't really know where to start, right? Like they have this concept for, say, a t-shirt or a sweater or a hoodie or whatever, and they want to manufacture it. And short of doing something on, I think in the West we have things like Teespring and Custom Ink where you can print your own T-shirts. Like short of doing something like that, it's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to navigate. Printing T-shirts or designing merchandise and stuff like that. So that's sort of where our partners come in. I'm going to give a quick shout out to some of them. 0x Avenue, huge partner. Also big in the AVAX community, has been helping us extensively produce really high quality modern streetwear merch for a variety of projects, conferences across the board. And then, we also work with a company called Ichinosai in Japan. For those of you who don't or don't know who they are or aren't familiar, they actually do most of the screen printing for Takashi Murakami. So, what we're really kind of putting out there is that all of our partners are extremely good at what they do, but also top of the field in terms of producing high quality garments, but also we're working on developing relationships with figurine creators and other sorts of manufacturing processes as well.
You touched on streetwear and a little bit on the partnership with Puma. I know that's a big area in this space because those are collectors, and that's like a natural sort of have a natural tendency towards collection and kind of something that you can sort of funnel towards a digital experience. Could you tell us a little bit more about the Puma activation and how that came about and what that involved?
Yeah, so I mean, this is, like I said, this has been a long time coming. This technology isn't new to us. Legitimate's been around for over 3 years now. So I started the company back in 2019, and very early on, I met a handful of people over at Puma, over at Rock Nation, that saw the potential in this technology. Specifically, I met Emery Jones. For those of you who know that name, you know how big of a entrepreneur and sort of business mogul he is. He immediately saw the value in what we were doing. I think the one key thing to take away is they saw the value and they saw the utility in all of this, and not necessarily the terminology or even the intricacies of something like a quote unquote NFT or Web3 or whatever. So really it came about as an opportunity to, one, bring a new sort of technology to the table, but also, connect the dots between collaborative efforts of two of the biggest companies in the world. So we specifically say Puma a lot, but I think sometimes people forget to mention that no, this is a collaboration between Puma and Rock Nation. So one of the biggest, entertainment labels in the world and one of the biggest footwear athletics companies in the world leverage our technology to create Phygital sneakers. And these sneakers, when you tapped in behind the scenes, we can talk about all the technology, all the blockchain stuff, but really what it provided for consumers was exclusive access to a curated mixtape of unreleased tracks. Actually, there is a listening party in New York City tonight. The actual full mixtape is going to be releasing soon on all digital streaming providers. But for those people who bought the sneakers, for those people who, were a part of the drop, 2.5 to 3 weeks ago, they were able to get access to this before anybody else. And this sort of content, this exclusive access, this is stuff that the space has been talking about, like the Web3 space has been talking about for years, right? We talk about things like token gated access and exclusive benefits. And really, you're what you're seeing here with Puma, with Rock Nation, is all of this coming to life in the real world and to people who might not even know what blockchain is or what Web3 is.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid point you bring up, Calvin, on this specific collaboration between Puma and Rock Nation, just in the sense of, at the end of the day, what we're trying to drive and what the partnership is driving is this additional digital experience, right? And so obviously when you can pair together something of a physical item, like a sneaker that's, designed and put together in kind of this partnership, it's amazing that it can also lead to, what is a unique digital experience that you can own through an NFT, right? And I think it's really important to speak to as well, just, how we're approaching and how you guys are approaching, building with these brands and onboarding kind of Web 2 users who may not care about NFTs, may not know about NFTs, but at the end of the day, we're really just creating better experiences and kind of packaging them up in a way that Web 2 users can go on, they can scan the shoe, they can log in via email. I think that's something that we really thought was fantastic working with you guys and the user experience that you put together there as well. So I totally agree that really the back end of this digital experience is really what makes this special. And I ordered mine online. I'm still waiting for them, so I had to return them for the wrong size, but I'm still waiting for it, Calvin. But super exciting.
Thank you for the support.
So this is great at onboarding, Web 2 sort of experiences for the brands that you talk about, but you've also working with, from the other side of the equation, from NFT native places. For example, you guys had a great activation with us at Summit 2 with some AVAX merchandise. So can you tell us a little bit about how you approach like the different activations for two sides of the equation? So being approached by a Web3 company who wants to get into physical goods versus being approached by Puma, Rock Nation, who have the physical goods and want to get into the digital experience side.
I'll speak. I'll do a quick intro, Daniel, and then I'll let you get into the nitty gritty sort of frustrations of working with both sides. There's this term that's floating around, guys, that I personally don't like too much. People have started using it and it kind of dropped off. I'm not sure if it's still like a thing, but people started calling stuff Web 2.5. And that truly, really is like, I think, an accurate representation of like where we're sitting right now. Is that on one hand, you have these, major brands that have existed in the retail space and luxury space and traditional, manufacturing space for decades now. And they need to understand how to tap into the next generation of consumer trends and habits and whatnot. On the flip side, you have these super small, potentially decentralized, really progressive projects that really are all in on the concept of decentralization, all in on the concept of I think we're calling it on-chain summer now, right? And I think that for anything to scale, you really need a symbiotic relationship between the where the quote unquote money is, or where sort of the resources are, which is these larger brands that have a lot of money, a lot of resources. Like, and when I say money, I'm also talking about like broader, ideas of money. The ability to manufacture tens of thousands of products, hundreds of thousands of products, the ability to distribute worldwide. I think with something like that, it's been a constant struggle getting both sides to kind of see eye to eye. And we are sort of that perfect transient layer between Web3 and Web2. So with a large enterprise brand, they might not care about full decentralization. And we might have to push for certain things that they don't necessarily write in, they don't put pen to paper, say, we want something on the Avalanche blockchain, right? But we're helping guide them to the best experience, the best technology. On the flip side, you have these Web3 projects that are like, we want full decentralization. We want, on-chain verification, all these different sort of, we want 6551, we want 4337. And, when we have conversations with them, and this is where I'll pass to Daniel in like a couple of seconds. When we have conversations with these people, it's usually like, hey, like, what's the end goal here, right? Is it is it to continue building this sort of decentralized sort of push, or are you trying to onboard the next generation of consumers and people who will be using Web3 technology? And there's no right or wrong answer. It's just we've chosen strategically to exist right in the middle. But yeah, Daniel can speak probably a little bit more to the technical complexities of building for both sides.
Yeah, I think this is a great place to start. So I think, the two customer segments, right? Like the 2.5, the Web 2.5, brands, digital agencies, people like that, and the Web 3, full on, Web 3 builders. I think they have a very similar goal here, right? Which is like, hey, let's enable the coolest experience possible. I think where it differs is, the very Web 3 side of things. People tend to overcomplicate a lot of technology because they just want to try new things out, right? So you think of it as like more of a tinker builder community versus like a mass market community, right? So for mass market, it's actually quite easy. When we work with Puma, they don't quite frankly know a whole lot about technical, how most of these technologies work. They just expect it to work, right? And so when we design for consumer experiences like that, hey, maybe wallets aren't the best choice. Maybe we should just abstract that away with an email. When we say like, hey, claim an NFT, or let's do a token gated this or that. Like we turn all these terminologies into what layman terms would be, right? Hey, these are exclusive experiences that you can only access when you have the physical good and you log in with an email to access those goods, right? And then even on the blockchain provenance side, right? We say it's like, hey, these are ownership history, where we track all these things digitally, right? And then on the Web3 side, I think Calvin touched upon a lot of the experimental stuff like 6551, and it's not that we're not interested in it. It's like we are evaluating it from what value does this provide the user versus let's try something new just for the hell of it, right? And I think there are many players that are also in this space. On the 6551 side, there's a whole token bound working group. I think that their Telegram chat has like a couple hundred people now, and I think everyone has like a slightly different take on what that experience actually is. And when we're looking at it, it's like people shouldn't probably have to pay gas to claim an NFT or interact with an NFT in the 6551 world. We're still trying to figure out how exactly to get that accomplished, because we see in the real world, when we're at conferences, when we're at other places, that like many people in the blockchain space, even at conferences, don't have the right tokens to interact with the chain and to do these things on chain. So we at Legitimate think that it's absolutely imperative that we pay for the gas so that users don't have to, right? And we manage an email wallet alternative, so that if you are not a Web3 user, you don't need to go down the wallet, fiddle with these seed phrases and figure out how to connect the wallet to the D apps and things like that. I think we take care of all of that, but at the same time, we also want to offer the Web3 enthusiasts, the people who want to tinker with these things, an alternative where they can access the ecosystem in a way that's also streamlined for a Web3 audience, instead of like a full decentralized solution here.
I love the way that you describe Web3 founders as tinkerers and people that like to experiment, and maybe to the frustration of trying to push out a product that's has much more mass market appeal. But from the tech side, and I promise I'm not trying to lead the witness, but you guys were Legitimate as a company existed before the Avalanche blockchain was public, before the C chain even went live. What made you guys reevaluate the solution you were using and then bring it over to Avalanche?
Yeah. So, I mean, one, like the Avalanche blockchain is insanely fast, right? So, when we're looking at confirmation times, it's about 3 to 5 seconds for 90% of the transactions we submit, and I think the upper limit is about 8 seconds. So that's incredibly fast in a decentralized blockchain world, right? When we're looking at other chains, Ethereum, Polygon, things like that, I think we're looking at a minimum of 8. Average is around 15. Sometimes you look at the upper 95 percentile of the times. It's about 22 seconds. That's a really long time, right? When we're trying to onboard, say, like Web 2, Web 2.5 users, they kind of expect the same web experience as Web 3, right? So when a web page loads, we would say that most web pages load in about 3 to 5 seconds. So if we're also doing on-chain transactions and they complete in about 3 to 5 seconds, they know that pattern and they know to expect to wait, around that amount of time. I think with normal, with the other chains, when it's a little bit slower, people get really confused. Like, why is it taking so long? Am I doing something wrong? Or, maybe this technology is too new for me. I don't get it, right? So that was, why we chose Avalanche and why we recommend it for pretty much all of our products out there.
Amazing. Yeah.
I do want to take this
Go ahead.
time to say that our protocol and everything is chain agnostic. We're fully EVM compatible, and I think that that also speaks to sort of the power of Avalanche here, because I think when we say we're chain agnostic, we fully mean, as a Web3 project, you can come to us and say, we want to be on Ethereum mainnet, we want to be on Polygon or whatever, and we will gladly support that. But if you come to us and say, hey, we don't really know, like, can you advise us, like, that itself, I think, is a testament to sort of our sort of recommendation, like Daniel said.
Absolutely. And I think, it's kind of just spoken to our relationship over the past, probably, 8 months ago when it started, and kind of the various partnerships that have been launched through Legitimate and supported on Avalanche, as Sean had touched upon previously. Real quick, I wanted to go back, kind of as we were speaking about, kind of this Web 2 experience and, brand related conversation. I speak with brands all the time, and solution providers and consultants all the time that are working with these, Fortune 500 brands that are forging their digital strategies. I'm curious, from your perspective, as you guys are talking to them, how are the brands thinking about entering this space, and does it alleviate some of the kind of concerns with a product that is a Phygital product, right? It's not as much as, kind of the 2020, 2021, we're just going to go out there and throw up an NFT for sale with no strategy behind it. Here you guys have an amazing technology protocol. Obviously, they can link that up with their physical merchandise. Curious how those conversations have been for you guys lately, and do you feel there's an advantage, as it's more of a Phygital that comes with a physical merchandise product?
I think the key secret here is that we don't actually sell any of what we provide as Web3 or NFTs or blockchain. Um, our value proposition is very, very clear. We connect physical products to unique digital experiences. And in doing so, we frame things in a manner that make it easy for brands to understand the bottom line. It's like, for them, it's okay, why are we doing this? Okay, we have this collaboration, we have this campaign, we want to connect the dots between what we're making available digitally and what we're making available physically, right? So for brands to understand why something like Legitimate is powerful isn't necessarily too far of a stretch, and also doesn't require a lot of sort of loopholes or other organizations to be set up. Frankly speaking, a lot of the brands that we talk to have dedicated Web3 teams. It's almost a completely separate team altogether. And more often than not, we're not talking to these Web3 teams, because with these Web3 teams, a lot of these brands, they're either outsourced to some other agency, or they're, really, really new people who aren't actually core and native to the Web3 space. So that's why when you see a lot of these brands, I think a lot of their quote unquote Web3 efforts fall short because it's not, excuse the sort of play on words here, it's not legitimate, it's not authentic. It's like we've seen over the last cycle, it's a lot of bandwagoning and chasing sort of this concept of what everybody else is doing. When we work with brands, we actually start from the ground up. We figure out, okay, like who here is in charge of something like marketing, something like experiential. And I would say more so we're targeting the retail tech side of things as opposed to the uniquely Web3 side of projects. So yeah, I think to answer your question, Jake, I think Web3 and blockchain both as words are fine. Like brands and people in retail tech understand that technology is useful. I do also want to say that NFT, the word NFT or the letters NFT, that's a very, very sort of like sensitive and like almost bad word in this space right now, especially as it pertains to like traditional retail.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I totally get it. I know, when you guys were working with Puma, that was a big strategy, and that along with just how can you really focus on a traditional Web2 experience, like you guys had mentioned with email login, whether it's with notifications, with speaking about kind of digital assets or digital collectibles. I totally agree that the framework of how things are explained and communicated is moving in the right direction and should continue to kind of be prefaced that way. So that's been fantastic to see how you guys have approached that as well. So we'll kick it back to you, Sean.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the brand side of things, and I know that's a big part of the business for you guys. I am curious, just because we do have a lot of Web3 NFT native audiences here, even though we just talked about it being a bad word. Talk about it from the other side. Where do you think that brands that have started as just say a simple NFT project, where do you think they can take it? Where do you think that they can go to get into the Phygital space?
So I can keep this pretty short and sweet. I've talked about this here and there on several interviews and podcasts that I've been part of. We're going to be publishing an op-ed about this soon. But honestly, I think even in the Web3 space, I don't believe that we should be focusing on the word NFT anymore. I think that concept, comes from it's been, excuse my language, like pretty bastardized in a way. I think as a terminology, it was as a term, it was made to signify a difference between something like ERC20, which is fungible, and something that is non-fungible, right? And obviously, all of these PFPs and everything that people have started to associate with NFTs are non-fungible. So it's not necessarily miswording or anything, but I think that overall what you're seeing is either a lot of NFT projects, quote unquote PFP projects, are struggling to stay relevant and find sort of their version of product market fit. But the ones that are the PFP projects that are finding, product market fit, if you would even call it that, they're realizing that, hey, actually what they've built up in terms of an empire is the potential to be one of the next biggest IP brands in the world. And you see this across the board with obviously Yuga, you see this with Clone X, you see this with Azuki. Really, in terms of where the value is, it's they've built up this world that most people have monetary interest in, but also they're so bought in now that you're seeing lore, you're seeing characters come out. It's no longer just about traits and like, oh, what's rare, what's not. I can go and spin up a PFP project in like 2 seconds if I wanted to, right? The real value comes from the storytelling, comes from the lore, comes from the background. And if you kind of put that all together, what do you have? You have IP. So in that sense, if we're talking about Phygital, let's talk about the current IP brands that dominate the world today, a lot of them are, Western, a lot of them are Japanese, but the one thing that a lot of these, IP brands have in common is that 60 to 80% of their annual revenue comes from merchandise sales. So if you put two and two together, right, like physical merchandise, Web3 projects, hey, where does that meet in the middle? Let's start talking about Phygital. Let's start talking about how you can take your IP as a quote unquote NFT PFP project and scale it out beyond just your holders. And look, I'm not the only one with this opinion. Just look at what Luca is doing with Pudgy Penguins. I'm, advising and part of other PFP projects that are they're all thinking about the same thing.
Would you say there's almost even a blueprint for this from traditional media? The way like Star Wars, they make all their money from merchandising, like you said, but it started out as a story, as a story that you could consume. Simpsons, whatever these brands are. I think the exception to the case is probably He-Man, where they made all the toys and then they wrote a show around it afterwards. But do you think there's like a blueprint for maybe some of these, I'll say, digital collectible companies, and avoid using the bad word?
I think it's interesting with what you're saying about He-Man, but also like Pokemon started that way as well, right? Pokemon actually started as a video game before they realized, oh my God, this is like $1 billion business or whatever, and they turned it into a manga, they turned it into anime and whatnot. So in that lens, it's with He-Man and Pokemon, you started to see a deviation from that traditional playbook, right? And with NFTs, I guess, about PFPs, you're starting to see another deviation, right? And that deviation is, it's kind of a litmus test, is you're starting now, not even with a game or not even with toys, you're starting with people who bought in, most people who bought in because it is a financial investment, right? I'm not I'm not an accountant. This is not financial advice, right? So like, don't take my word for any of that. I have to put that out there. But can you, as a PFP project, scale out beyond your immediate holders who have monetary interests in the success of your quote unquote project? And I think that litmus test is yet to be proven. I mean, we saw it with Pudgy. We're seeing it with Pudgy, and I think honestly, Pudgy's probably doing the best right now as a project, because not only are they on Amazon selling toys, but they're also on Instagram creating reels that have, quite frankly, nothing to do with NFTs or whatnot. So I think the playbook has changed. I think that Pudgy may have been one of the first projects to successfully kind of imprint how they've done it, but I think there are lots of different ways that I'm not necessarily smart enough to think about.
Yeah, I that's a good point of how they start with potentially people seeing them as financial instruments, which again, like we said, not financial advice. But it's almost like it has to be more natural than that. It has to be that same experience of, seeing a toy in the store and saying, "Mom, I want that." Oh, and by the way, the show is coming in the fall. That goes along with this He-Man character. So when NFTs get to that point where, digital collectibles get to that point where you see it, and hopefully the majority of people buying them are like, I think this is cool. I think this is fun. I want this, not I'm hoping to sell this later for more money. I think that's where you start building that empire. And so that's a good point you make. How about, we talked a little bit about the PFP aspect of things, but in terms of seeing things and saying, that's cool, I want that, a big part of our space is one-of-one artists. Do you see them being able to get involved in the Phygital space? And do you have any thoughts on, or are you seeing any cool activations in that regard?
It's a bit more tough, I think, with one-of-one artists and one-of-one art. I think specifically just the distribution is more challenging. I really want to push sort of artists who are here to think about things beyond just, hey, selling my one-of-one art. Even if you look at one-of-one art, in the last 300, 400 years, it eventually that one-of-one art gets licensed. It almost becomes in and out of itself intellectual property again. So bringing that back, I think, we actually went through a year where we experimented a lot with artists. We did a lot of one-on-one drops where we integrated our NFC tags, our legit tags, into canvases and sculptures and everything, basically tokenizing real world art, like physical canvases and sculptures and everything. And I think that's what we learned. I think is that that's valuable, but I don't think it brings the immediate aha moment to artists and collectors the same way that getting something at a store and scanning it would. Primarily because if you're buying one-of-one art anyway, like if you're buying it as an NFT, most people who buy one-of-one art either buy it as an investment or they buy it just because they want to know that they own it. And I think having that physical there is important, but not necessarily. The incentives really don't add up. But if we challenge artists to think about, okay, what's after, right? What's after that one-of-one? It's like, can we talk about licensing that art to be printed, as quote unquote open editions or printed on T-shirts, right? I mean, you walk into a gallery, you walk into a museum, you see the Mona, and you go to the Louvre gift shop. I guarantee you, there's gonna be so much merch, so many prints of the Mona Lisa. And what's the difference between buying something like that in the Louvre versus walking outside and buying a replica from, one of those street hagglers that are trying to sell you something for half price? And I think that's where this technology starts to come in and add up, is like, okay, actually, if you're backing these physical prints, if you're backing these, physical merchandise and turning them into phygital things, then you start bringing in the provenance and the authenticity aspect of Web3. And it enables you to start thinking more long-term as opposed to short-term.
Not to get too deep into it, but those postcards with the Mona Lisa you buy on it, that's the tokenizing of an experience, right? It's the physical representation of your visit to the Louvre, and we're just evolving to the next step of that.
Exactly. And I think that with sort of phygital technology, with Web3, there's so much more that is possible now. Just proving that you're there, great. Right. And what else? Think AR, VR, metaverses, exclusive content. I don't know. The sort of what we like to say is the possibilities are endless.
Oh yeah.
Sorry guys. I actually have to jet. I will still be listening, but Daniel, probably if you could take over for me, that'd be great.
Thanks.
Yeah, I got you.
Thank you for being with us, Calvin. You can open your mic, and I'm assuming you're at the listening party. Just give us some of that listening party background. Give us the mixtape.
I am 8 minutes away, but I will do that when I get there, guys.
Awesome.
We appreciate you, Calvin.
Thank you so much. Well, I see that there were some requests that came up, kind of sat down. We are going to let people come up and ask questions of Legitimate in just a second. So if you do, go ahead and get in line, and I'll start bringing people up here and there. I wanted to ask Daniel, maybe this is maybe not the right question for you, but hopefully you can give a little bit of an answer. How can Web3 projects, people that are in the audience that are listening, they're interested in getting involved, how can they work with Legitimate or get in touch with you and maybe start to talk about ideas?
Yeah, so I think on our website, there's a contact form that you can fill out, or you can email us at partnerships@legitimate.tech. I think, for people who are thinking about, potentially doing Phygital, potentially doing some sort of, limited drop, maybe for their PFP project, for their fashion project, for things like that, we're definitely happy to help. And if you are in Japan, if you are, we work closely with our partners there. If you are thinking about conferences, if you're thinking about merch, we also have our great partners like OX Avenue, who can help you produce the merch, integrate our chips, do basically everything for you, to like alleviate the amount of back and forth, logistics coordinations and things like that. So there's different solutions that we can offer, depending on what your needs are, and obviously what the budget is and your potential clients, right, or your potential customers and activations that you're thinking about. So definitely happy to help. Partnerships@legitimate.tech is the email.
Awesome. Thank you. So we have our first question up here. Again, if you're coming up, please keep the questions on topic. Not a place to shill. This is a place for us to learn a little bit more about Legitimate. So Chaz Gold, you're up first.
Yeah, I was going to ask about would this be a good platform or space to do like I do art with the Artivive app, which is AR interactive stuff where you can point the phone at the screen, and the animation and the music comes through the phone screen, and it can also work on a print, like a physical print of the same thing. So I had this idea of doing the NFTs that are just like the static image, and then we can use the app on the screen, but also then the collector will also get a what's called a physical print in the mail. Would that be a good way or a good place to do something like that?
I think, not to get too deep into this exact example, but I think if you're distributing prints, say, to people, right, that is a very easy way we can integrate a chip into that print. And if you're making multiple prints, we can make an open edition so that all the chips are connected to the same NFTs on the same collection, right? So these things are pretty easy for us to do. And if you want to go back and integrate an AR VR experience for that print as well, that is something we can also discuss.
Yeah, and I think to just add to that question to Daniel, like the flexibility of where you guys can plug in terms of the format of the chip is something that is super special as well. So I believe you guys have the sticker format, obviously the plastic NFC chip, and then an actual woven nylon small little piece as well that's waterproof, heat resistant, etc. on clothing. So I think it's an easy use case in terms of a physical print, and it's just based upon whatever type of tag via Legitimate that you would want to use.
Yeah, to go a little bit deeper into that, I think we offer about 20 different sizes, formats, chips, materials, things like that. So there's definitely one that's for you, and we actually have a really cool one in development right now that has a tamper-proof mechanism to it, and it's designed for bottles specifically. So if you're looking at expensive bottles of wine or liquor, we can put it over the bottle cap, and so when you open it, the tag detects that it's open from the antennas that are that goes over the seal. So it doesn't really matter what types of physical goods you're doing. I think we probably got something for you.
That's really cool. Because what good is drinking a really expensive bottle of wine unless you get to tell the entire world on the blockchain that you just drank an expensive bottle of wine?
Yeah, right.
I think that's a fun use. And I also, to your question, Chaz, I hope that AR and VR starts to take off a little bit, maybe with the release of this Apple device, because it is a very cool space. It just needs adoption, and I think that's the biggest thing. So
it's coming. It's been coming for a while. It's just people are just starting to pay attention to it at this point. Like Trevor Jones really brought it to the forefront with his Nifty Gateway thing, So it's on its way. I have faith. It's one of my favorite things in the world to play around with. So,
100%. Hey, thanks for the question. Coming up next is Igly.eth. I hope I said that right.
Yes, it's Igly. It's not ugly. Thank you so much for having me on stage. Art on Avalanche. My question is directed towards you. For someone that's new coming into the Avalanche network, what would be the best on-ramp for me as an artist or other creators out there that are listening, I'm pretty familiar with other blockchains and different networks. And if I was to put my art on Avalanche, it would be my 10th blockchain. So.
Oh, wow. I hope you do. And wow, just putting that out there to the group, you're going to get the welcome wagon. I think, the Avalanche ecosystem really prides itself on being very welcoming to new artists. We celebrate it like the birth of a child. But for getting on our blockchain, technically the easiest thing to do is probably use the bridge. If you're familiar with ETH, there's a core.app bridge where you can bridge over some Ethereum, and just if you bridge enough, you'll get some gas, so you can translate that into AVAX and start minting. We have a bunch of great marketplaces. I don't want to say any by name because I don't want to imply endorsement, but I'm sure anybody will be happy to point you in the right direction, comment or add you as a friend and give their recommendations. But we have a lot of great marketplaces. And then, there's lots of ways to start getting involved. The Art on Avalanche Twitter account that I run here, we do a digital weekly challenge. We just released one today where the theme is loss. So you make an NFT, you mint it, you put it as a comment to the challenge, and after a week, it goes to the Avalanche Foundation. They vote on the 3 that they like, and they make bids on them. So it's a way to maybe get some bids on your artwork early on, starting out. So that's one fun way. Hop in on some Avasance classes. There's auctions that happen with certain marketplaces. There's drops. There's all sorts of fun stuff. I can't even get into all of it, but I guarantee you, if you just type the word AVAX and NFT into a tweet, you'll get the welcome wagon.
Sweet. Awesome. I will definitely check it out. I appreciate it. And amazing. Keep up the good work. Let's keep building.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Our next guest is... Oh, we lost Daniel, so I wanted to add him back. Wovic45. I'm going to give him just a second to hop up here. I know it takes a second to be able to hear. And so that weird, awkward transition, I always try to verbally talk over. Wovic45, can you hear me? Wovic, are you there? You're on mute. Are you actually have a question? Let me know. I'll keep you up for a second while I get Daniel back up here, if we can. Daniel, can you hear me? Daniel, are you back with us? Perfect. While we're waiting on any other questions, Wovic, I'm going to send you back. While we're waiting on other questions, I was wondering if you could tell us, I just saw Dokio is doing something with you guys. What are you allowed to tell us about the Dokio integration or collab, if anything?
Oh man, there's not a whole lot we can say, but I'm just like super excited about the project because, from what they've released publicly, right? The creative, the storytelling that they're doing is like top-notch art, top-notch creative, and the team behind it is super amazing. So, we are obviously doing some merch for them, but beyond that, there's not a whole lot I can share at this point.
Fair enough. I figured that'd be the answer, but I would not be doing my job as host if I didn't ask for alpha, because that's what the people are here for. They're here for the alpha. And I don't see any other questions on the stage, so I think that's a good place to wrap it up, Jake, unless you had anything else to say. Any other questions?
No, I don't think I have any other questions. This was a long time coming. Like I said, we've been working with a legitimate team for, probably 8+ months now. So we're super thrilled to see the, Puma and Rock Nation collab come together. And we're super excited to work with them moving forward on a handful of different collaborations, work with them to onboard brands and amazing experiences. So super, super happy to be working with the team and only looking forward to, what we'll accomplish together in the future here.
Well said. And I think we're losing Daniel. I see him connecting and dropping. But I want to thank the legitimate team for being with us. They're in different parts of the world, so coordinating it all was a little bit of a trouble. And thanks for taking time. We know they're very, very busy, and we caught them at some, in the middle of the commute, and And I don't know what else is going on, but I thank you guys for taking time out of your day for being with us. And thank you everybody else for joining us and learning a little bit about Legitimate. Follow the Avalanche account, follow Art on AVAX, follow Legitimate, and we'll catch up with you next time.